Thank you. The Imposter, Conquering Self-Doubt in Speech-Language Pathology. And as Mrs. Terry said, I'm Sierra Arceneaux. And just to give you guys a little bit about myself, from my educational background, I have a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Louisiana at Louisiana. And then also I received a Master of Science degree from the Southern University. And then currently I am pursuing a clinical doctorate degree from Rocky Mountain University. For some of the organizations that I am involved in, I am a certified speech-language pathologist with the American Speech-Language Hearing Association, which we all know as ASHA. And I'm a part of various special interest groups. We call them SIGs. I'm a part of SIG 10, 11, 14, and 20. And I've been a member of the Professional Development Committee for SIG 11, which is Administration and Supervision, for about 2 years now. And then I was recently appointed as the member of the Multicultural Issues Board for ASHA. And then I am a proud member of Sisters in Speech Therapy and Audiology, which we know as SISTAs. And I am currently the president for the Houston chapter. And then for my community organization, I'm a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women for the Houston Metropolitan chapter. And also for presentations that I've previously done, I've presented on autism for autism strategies and resources for the Houston chapter of S.I.S.T.A.s, and then also for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women for the Houston chapter as well. And so working with individuals with autism and their families has always been a passion for me. But however, experiencing anxiety and burnout and stress, this have led me to wanting to look more into doing research on imposter syndrome and perceived stress. And so with this new passion, I wanted to bring more awareness about imposter syndrome, also discuss the impact that it has, especially on speech-language pathologists, and then also provide strategies to help to overcome it. All right, so what is imposter syndrome? So imagine achieving your goals or getting recognized for your hard work, but then however, in your mind, you feel like a fraud. And then you worry about that people will eventually discover that you don't deserve your success. And so imposter syndrome is also known as imposter phenomenon. It is the psychological experience characterized by constant feelings of inadequacy and the fear of being exposed as a fraud. And so imposter syndrome, it's not classified as a formal psychiatric condition, and it's not included in the International Classification of Diseases, nor is it in the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. So it's just a syndrome, it's just a phenomenon. And so imposter syndrome was first studied by researchers Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes in 1978. And the two authors, they studied two groups of women and they based this off of their family backgrounds. So the research first started out looking at family backgrounds. And so there were two groups of women. The first group of women included women who had a sibling or a relative who were known for being an intelligent person in their family. And then the other women who weren't known as that person or that intelligent family, these women often felt that they could not meet their family's expectations. And then as a result, they doubted their own abilities. And then it caused them to experience imposter syndrome. And then the second group that they looked into is a group that included women who were seen as exceptional by their families. And when they encountered obstacles later on in life, and when they weren't able to meet their goals and expectations for themselves, they began to doubt themselves and they struggled with meeting their family's expectations. And so in 1995, Clance et al., another group of authors, they looked into society influence on imposter syndrome and also did a little bit of research with the family as well. And with this one, the authors noted that while both men and women can experience these feelings, their focus was mainly on women and their challenges. And so they found that social and personal backgrounds, they often contribute to those feelings of being an imposter. And so it went into detail just talking about how society teaches different values to boys and to girls. And so it's leading where they said that for boys, the expectations is that they should be strong. And then for girls, the expectation is that we should be more nurturing. And so this can cause some women to downplay their achievements, making it difficult for them to succeed. And so looking into the prevalence of imposter syndrome, where it is mostly found. And so it's about 9 to 82% of professionals say that they do experience imposter syndrome. It's mostly prevalent in early careers, and then also people who are in their early stages of their career, and then also in highly specialized areas. Although imposter syndrome can be found both in females and males, it's primarily higher in females, and then it's also higher in minority groups. And so right now, as I was also researching, there's a lot of more information coming out on imposter syndrome in minority groups. And so despite being recognized in various healthcare professions, such as there's a lot of research on imposter syndrome in nurses, registered dietitians, physicians, surgeons, educators, and mental health professionals. Research on imposter syndrome in speech therapists are very limited. And so there's no current studies that examine the prevalence in SLPs. I do know there's one person who's working on getting that done, but currently there's no research on speech therapy and, well, SLPs and the prevalence for imposter syndrome. And so I was able to find two studies that discussed the imposter syndrome in SLPs. For Mishra et al. 2019, they discussed challenges faced by faculty of color in academic institutions. And then Roberts in 2023 discussed the challenges faced in academic institutions, and they specifically looked at SLP graduate programs. So the research is getting there, but it's still limited. So how do we understand this process? So to understand this phenomenon, it's important to see that these feelings develop in a cycle. And so when facing, it also starts whenever someone faces new responsibilities or gets a new task. And so people often react with anxiety, self-doubt, and worry. You can see that at the top. And then they'll either over-prepare for the task or they'll procrastinate. And then those who over-prepare, they believe that they must work harder to succeed, while the people who procrastinate, they think that their last-minute efforts are good enough. And then once the task is done, they feel relief and they feel like, even though they may receive praise, they often downplay it and they think that their success comes from them just putting more effort into the task or because of luck. And then this mindset can lead to them feeling and having self-doubt, being depressed, having depression, anxiety, and then making them feel like imposters. And then a new cycle starts. So a new cycle starts when new challenges come. And so some common characteristics of imposter syndrome are attributing their success to luck or external factors, kind of like what we talked about in the cycle. They have persistent self-doubt, fear of being exposed that they're a failure or that they're a fraud, perfectionism, and then overworking. All right, and so these are some contributing factors to imposter syndrome in SLPs. And so first we're going to look at the high expectations in a demanding field. And so SLPs, we're often expected to be experts, right? And we have multiple areas that we work in. We can work in pediatric therapy, adult therapy and rehab, dysphagia, AAC in the schools. And so we have all of these areas that we can focus on. So it's a very high expectation and very demanding for us. And then we also have different work environments. So we can work in a school, private practice, rehab, and also hospitals. And this can lead someone to feel like they're not enough or that they're overwhelmed by all of the tasks that we have to do. And then the second one is clinical fellowship year in early career. Year where we do supervision for 9 months. During this time, we're transitioning from graduate school or academia and working into becoming and practicing as an SLP. We do this for about 9 months under supervision. And this can be challenging because when you're expected to continuously meet expectations, and then with the transition, it can be hard to go from having that supervision and being in school to now having to be an independent clinician. So that can also contribute to an SLP to getting imposter syndrome. Another one is client outcomes. We are invested in our clients' progress and their well-being. And so maybe when a therapy approach may not yield immediate results, the client may not make any progress or maybe have limited progress, then sometimes we may feel like it's a personal failure and it's on us, right? And then also we have to take into consideration caregivers and parents and their high expectations. And so having all of that put on you, it can also contribute to having imposter syndrome. And balancing clinical practice. This goes along with the high expectations in the demanding field. This can also include our high caseload numbers, right? We're increasing our numbers daily. Right now, we're grateful to be in a career that we're in a high demand right now, right? And so with being in a high demand, it can also come with high caseload numbers, more clients, and then that will increase our paperwork. And so just with us, just as SLPs, we all know how we are. A lot of SLPs are known to be perfectionists. And so not meeting those not having high expectations for ourselves, and then also wanting to be perfect, that can be a lot for us, and it'll make us self-doubt ourselves if we're not able to meet those demands and expectations. And then this is a big one, especially for the group that presenting for today, for sisters, which is a minority group for SLPs. And so we have a lack of representation in our field. And so this can also be a contributing factor to imposter syndrome. And so approximately there's 95.6% of ASHA members affiliates identify as female. So our field is mostly female and it's mostly Caucasian and or white. And so only 9.5% identify as belonging to racially minoritized groups, and 3.2% identify as Black or African American. So being and having a lack of representation is definitely a contributing factor to imposter syndrome. Another one is a lack of formal mentorship. Especially in the early career professionals, they may struggle with this and they may feel like they have self-doubt if they do not have their regular supervision or mentorship during that time. And then we also have to take into account, I was also thinking about whenever an SLP goes from one work setting to another. Let's say an SLP is working in a school and they decide to go work into the hospital. There's more expectation. Well, both have the high expectations, right, and the demands, but it's a different setting. And so you have new things to do, new things to learn. And so that can be overwhelming. And then you can doubt yourself whenever you're not able to meet those demands. And then another one, and the last one is social comparison. This is a big one. I felt like I did this whenever I was first starting out as an SLP, especially attending different conferences. Social comparison is where SLPs may often compare themselves to more experienced colleagues, leading them to feeling inadequate. I did this a lot, like just viewing other SLPs at conferences, and I'm like, man, they know so much information. Like, why I don't know all of this stuff? But it takes lots of experience, right? Even coming out and graduating and doing our CFs, we're like, man, what is this? There's so much to learn, so much to do. I feel like we learned so much during or like hands-on and getting out there into the field rather than just in school. So we have to always give ourselves grace and know that we don't know it all just coming out. We're going to get there. And so the impact of imposter syndrome, many people feel anxious, depressed, and frustrated. They may also struggle with low self-confidence and experience stress, self-doubt, and fear. And these feelings often come from not meeting their personal goals and expectations. And then long-term effects of this can include like having a lack of confidence, having that perfectionism, and then a big one, which is chronic stress and burnout. And then, as mentioned earlier, when we talked about the silico process, these feelings reinforce each other and it can lead to burnout, loss of motivation. You can have low achievement. Stress can even give you make you have poor health, physical health, work performance, and then also emotional exhaustion. And one that I had to learn after working for 10 years, compassion fatigue. All right, so now we know the characteristics, we know the impact that it can have and the contributing factors for SLPs, but how do we overcome this if we feel like we have those feelings? So understanding the characteristics and the impact can assist with interventions and methods to overcome it. And so some research shows, especially Maribel et al. 2024, they reported that certain educational interventions for individuals with imposter syndrome, some of them included short workshops, some of them included group workshops, group therapy, also cognitive behavioral therapy. One thing was talking about focusing on self-compassion, being kind to yourself and giving yourself grace. That's my biggest thing. I'm always giving others grace, but I'm working on giving, I have to tell myself daily, give yourself grace. And one thing that I'm learning as well is embracing my mistakes and having a growth mindset. Then we have reframing negative thoughts. That's by replacing negative self-talk and putting it and exchanging it for positive supportive thoughts. Another thing that we can do for overcoming and something that I do is self-affirmations. And this is by practicing and speaking positive affirmations daily. I have my little self-affirmations card. I purchased some from Tabitha Brown. And it's not just having it in a box, right? But putting it all over where you can see it. I have some put in my office. I have some in the bathroom on my mirror so I can look at that daily. And then even I have an app on my phone that it pops up and it shows me an affirmation every now and then. So you can set it and show maybe like it can pop up daily, it can pop up twice or whatever, however you want to set it. But having those tools that can help you for self-affirmations. Mentorship is another one. Seek mentorship and feedback from a trusted colleague or supervisor. I feel like I do this all the time with my friends, my colleagues. We in a group text and we're always seeking support from each other. And mentorship can provide guidance, especially for early career clinicians. And then one thing that I've been learning, especially being in school right now, is don't suffer in silence. And so knowing that if I'm having trouble with something, reach out to somebody. Another one is professional development. Recognize that no one has all the answers and seek ongoing professional development. In our field, we have different conferences. There's different professional development workshops, especially on ASHA's website, the Learning Pass. I know a conference that's coming up is in Basel, and that's coming up next month. So just continuing to seek those professional development opportunities is really good too. Another way for overcoming is celebrating small wins. Keep track of your accomplishments and positive client outcomes. I remember a friend, she told me one time, she was like, you need to make a brag sheet or brag paper. And I'm like, what is that? And she said, put all of your accomplishments down, write them down on a piece of paper and just put it somewhere where you can see it. And so having that to remind you that, you know what, I've accomplished all these things. I can do it. I am able to do it. So just remembering and reminding yourself of your achievements. The positive client outcomes, I still have cards from clients and their families. So that's always good to have just to go back and see all of the kiddos that you've helped, or even if you've worked with adults, seeing everyone that you've worked with. And then maybe even keeping a success journal. Another one and a big one, this is number one, I feel, is self-care and work-life balance. That's something that we all feel struggle with, especially the work-life balance, especially when the caseload numbers keep going up, especially when the paperwork doesn't stop. What do we need to do? I find that it is important to manage a stress by doing self-care, practicing self-care for yourself. But I think the number one thing for self-care and work-life balance is setting boundaries. So setting boundaries, knowing when to stop and when to keep going. Because if not, your body will shut you down and will tell you when to stop. And I feel that the biggest way to overcome is self-awareness and support from others, and to know that you are not alone. And so some things that I do that help me to overcome, because I feel like I've suffered with imposter syndrome. I've taken the test, I've done the survey, and my numbers were moderate to high. And so some things that I do to overcome is I listen to podcasts, I listen to devotionals, YouTube sermons, like I talked about the self-affirmation cards. For self-care, I get a massage every month, and just making sure that I keep my stress levels down. Um, Another thing that really helps me in the morning, one of my friends, she told me about it's a devotional that I listen to every morning. It's called Coffee and Conversations with Miss Lakeisha. And when I tell you, she's on it every single morning, and she's giving like self-affirmation, she's speaking and doing devotionals, and she's also doing like some Bible study as well. And so I love that, and that's my pick me up in the mornings. And then also something that is really good for us to do is staying connected with colleagues and friends. I would not be where I am today without my friends helping me and supporting me, and even my colleagues as well supporting me as well. And then speaking of colleagues, support systems for SLPs. And so I put some pictures of some meetups that we've had so far with sisters, just joining a professional association, any online communities or groups, any SIGs for ASHA, joining this community for sisters, mentorship programs, supervision, definitely having that peer support and reaching out to others. And then the biggest one is collaboration and open conversations. I feel like if we keep having and talking about this more and figuring out, okay, how can we help us? Because, like I said, my passion used to be for autism. And then when I became burnout and I had anxiety, and I'm in the emergency room with anxiety and low potassium, it's like, okay, how can I help myself? How can we make the SLP better? And I feel like if we aren't our best, then we can't provide the best quality of care for our patients and our clients. And so we have to make sure that we support each other and do some of these things that I talked about to overcome it. Even if you don't have imposter syndrome, even if you still look at some of these things and help each other, or even if you have a colleague or a friend that may suffer from this, maybe helping them and giving them the information, and that can help as well. So definitely, I'm grateful for my support systems. Definitely, even my community organization, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, for my NCBW sisters. I've learned a lot from them. We advocate for Black women and girls, and so they've helped me to just not only advocate for that, but then also advocating for myself. So I'm learning a lot, and hopefully using some of that information to help with SOP as well. And then also wanting to just give a shout out to Mrs. Terry for asking me to present today on this topic. And then also wanting to give a shout out for our support system for our founder of Sisters, Ms. Juliet Bradford, for being the founder and presenting and giving this community for us. And then this is some of my, not some, but all of my references.